Representative Paul Ryan's 2012 budget released today includes reforms, what they call reforms, and also big cuts in housing assistance, job training, and food stamps, all of which would have a very big impact on particularly poor and minority communities. Some say. Representative Emanuel Cleaver chairs the Congressional Black Caucus and joins me now. What is your initial reaction to what you've been able to see so far of the Ryan budget?
Well, we received a preview of it yesterday, as much as could be given without seeing the actual budget. But it's clearly a nervous breakdown on paper, and it will do enormous damage, I think, to the vulnerable populations of this country. I'm not suggesting that Mr. Ryan wants to do damage, but it is doing damage nonetheless. And when you consider that the unemployment rate for African Americans is reaching a 25-year high, it's at 15.5%, and rising, and that means that the people who are going to be impacted by layoffs, for example, particularly in the public sector, are going to be minorities. Minorities make up one-fourth of the federal workforce. They did that because they figured that if they could work for the federal government, that would be a less likely opportunity for somebody to discriminate against them.
Well, one of the columns praising what Ryan has done has come from David Brooks in the New York Times today. His point is this: the Ryan budget puts all future arguments in the proper context, writes Brooks. The current welfare state is simply unsustainable, and anybody who is serious on left or right has to have a new vision of the social contract. Now, you may not agree with David Brooks, but his basic argument is that we have reached the point of no return. So we have to take a fresh look, bring new sight to what we've always assumed was the given. Address that for a moment, given the budget deficit and what you're facing.
To some degree, I agree with Mr. Brooks. But look, the budget is a moral statement. It is a declaration of the moral somebodiness of the United States. And I do think we need to look at social welfare again, but we can't devastate the poor as we do it. And I think we have to take some compassionately smaller steps than we're taking now. The poor will always be with us. I've read that in another non-government book. And it means that we have some responsibility. The United States can't invade or go to war in Libya to protect people who were being hurt, and then say we're no longer going to help people in the United States who are hurt. And it will disproportionately impact the vulnerable population, most particularly Hispanics and African Americans.
I want to ask you something. You just raised the subject of Libya. What do you think the United States' responsibility ought to be in Cote d'Ivoire and the Ivory Coast, where we have seen hundreds and hundreds of people, both sides apparently have military. The outgoing president is refusing to give up power, and the incoming, the president-elect, who is entitled to take over, but there have been atrocities reported, at least, on both sides. Do we have any responsibility, or should we leave that up to the United Nations?
Well, we have confused the world and the American public, and it goes to both Republican and Democratic administrations. I mean, what separates us going into Libya that didn't allow us to go into the Sudan, where tens of thousands, some record that hundreds of thousands were killed. And so it seems as if we have less interest in sub-Saharan Africa than we do in Northern Africa and the Middle East, and there are probably some reasons for that I don't understand. I hope it's not what many Americans believe, and that is that the oil-rich companies are going to always get the attention of and support from the United States.
Do you think it's a matter of color?
I'm probably one of the strongest person who advocates trying to reduce the language that separates people on the basis of color. But that's why I talked about the fact that it may be oil. I don't know. With President Obama, I don't think he made a decision to invade or to use Tomahawk missiles in Libya, but refuses to go into sub-Saharan Africa. After all, his family members are still living there in sub-Saharan Africa. So I don't think it's that. But I think it is still confusing because we don't know what separates it. Somebody needs to explain that to us. what is our interest, the national interest we have in Libya, and why don't we have the same interest in the Ivory Coast, for example?
Emanuel Cleaver, thank you very much, Congressman. Thanks for joining us today.